Welcome to Pepcoding. From today onwards, we will be starting a new module in which we will be learning all about of strings. We will look at how we actually create strings in Python, what are strings, what are all the functions available with strings, and what actually those functions does. So stay tuned to know it. Before learning about the strings, the first question comes into our mind is that what is actually a string? If you will look out to this image very carefully, you would come to know that in this image we have nothing but these are just a characters. I think the first thing that we have learned in our school days were these characters only from A to Z. When you combine these characters, when you combine these characters in any order, or when you group the characters, it forms you a string. So string is nothing but it's just a group or a sequence, or you could say a collection of characters. Look out to this image very carefully. You can see it over here that this is nothing but it's just a string where S itself is a character T, U, D, Y. Every individual character, every one is an individual character. When you put them together, it forms you a string. So we could say that a string is nothing but it is just a collection or a sequence of characters. This line is really important because in future videos when we'll be iterating over the strings, or when we will perform several operations on strings, it it's something like that. We don't perform operations on strings, we actually perform operations on characters only. We will be performing operations on individual character. So please remember that string is nothing but it is just a collection of characters. When you group several characters, it forms you a string. Now let's look at our second question, that how we actually create strings in Python. Basically, there are three ways to create strings in Python. The first one is you can enclose a collection or a sequence of character within a single quote, or you can enclose the collection of character within a double quote, or you can enclose the sequence of character within a triple quote. So basically in these three possible ways you can create strings in Python. Now as we are learning coding and it's more important to code it, so let's first code that is really we can create strings in these three possible ways or not. So let's check it out. So we'll be using NADOS compiler. Over here, just go to nados.pepcoding.com, and on the right side, you can see there is a code symbol present. Just click over it here, and you will be able to see a compiler will pop up. Over here, just select the language in which you are coding, and you can simply write your code. Now, so as we have seen that in a string, we can create strings in all possible three ways. So let's code it. The first one was that we can create a string within single quote. Now we are creating a string within double quotes, and now we are creating strings within triple quotes. Just go to console, click on the run button. We can see we are having, okay, the spelling is wrong. So we can clearly see that we can clearly see that in all the three possible ways we can create strings. So is there any difference in creating all these three possible ways of strings? Now, first, let's look at this position. The recommended way to create strings in Python is that enclose them in single quote or in double quotes. Basically, if we want to create a multi-line string means if you are writing a paragraph, then enclose that particular string within triple quotes, within triple quotes, within triple quotes. So remember, if you are creating a normal string, you can use either a single quote or a double quote. But if you are creating a multi-line string, then use this triple quote. Now you can look at over here. We will type if now over here I have written a multi-line strings. You can see this is the line 1 and this is the line 2. If you will try to run this, you can see the output clearly. So it basically sees over here it confirms that to create a multi-line string, you should enclose the string within triple quotes. So we can conclude the 2 points over here. The first one is the first one is the first point is we can create strings either enclosing in a single quote or you can enclose within double quotes to create multi-line strings. Multi-line strings, that is, if you want to create multiple line strings, then enclose that particular string within the single, within the triple single quotes. Now let's move to our third question, that is string in Python is mutable or immutable. Now, with exam point of view and with coding point of view, this question is really important. This question is highly important. So first and foremost thing that we will be learning, that what is mean by mutability and immutability. Mutability and immutability. Immutability. Before knowing it out that whether strings in Python is mutable or immutable, we should know what is meant by mutability and immutability. So let's look it out. An example. Suppose if you have made something and you try to change it. If you try to change it and changes happen, that concept is mutable. Changes happen, that means it is mutable. For example, a pencil. Whatever you write with pencil, you can remove it. You can remove it or change it. You can remove it or change it with eraser. So text written with pencil, text written with pencil is mutable, is mutable. But anything you write with pen is unchangeable, is unchangeable. That is, you cannot erase it. You cannot erase it. So it means whatever you write with pen, it is immutable. So text with pen, text with pen is immutable. For example, I'm using a pen tab to teach you. This itself is mutable because I can remove things. I can remove things. I can rewrite there. At the same place, I can rewrite things. But if on copy you are using a pen, and if you have written something, either you can cut it or you have to use widener. You have to use widener to remove it out. So this is something that if you can remove the things, if you can remove, pencil is immutable. Why? Because you can remove or change it, the text written within. But with the text written with pen is unchangeable. That's why we say pen is immutable. Now remember this concept. Anything that you can change it is mutable. Anything you can't change it is immutable. And change basically means on the same place you have to change it. Now, let's look out whether the strings in Python is mutable or immutable. Now, I would like to tell you an answer. What happens in Python? Now, first we will code it and then we will try to analyze it whether strings in Python is mutable or immutable. So let's suppose I have created a string and I have written coding in it. Again, I have created again I am writing. If I'll print a string, what should be the output? The output is Pepcoding. Let's analyze this statement. First, I have written str is equals to Pepcoding. Then I have written str is equals to Pepcoder. When I print, when I have printed str, I got an output as Pepcoder. That means you have created over here a string, and you have initialized a value Pepcoding to it. Again, you are reinitializing it with Pepcoder. That means you are reassigning it. Reassigning. It simply means change is possible. Change is possible. So strings are mutable. Strings are mutable. Yes. So this concludes that in Python, strings are mutable. But is it true? No, not at all. In Python, strings are immutable. But we have clearly seen over here that once you have created a variable str, you have initialized a value Pepcoding, you can reinitialize it. Then a string should be mutable. But actually strings are immutable in Python. Why? And how? And if they are immutable, then how can this change is possible? Let's try to analyze each and individual. Okay. Let's try to analyze each and individual question that occurs over here. First thing, how this code is working internally, let's try to analyze it. We have a heap memory. Over here in stack, we have a stack memory. We create a variable str and this particular object with value Pepcoding is being created inside an heap. So this str is basically pointing to this object, and in this object you have a value Pepcoding. Again, you are trying to create an object Pepcoder with a new value. So a new object with this value Pepcoder will be created, and as you are reinitializing to str, so str will start pointing to this Pepcoder. It will stop pointing to this. It won't point to this. When you try to print str is pointing to this object, and in this object pepcoder is present. So a value, a pepcoder has been printed on the console. Over here, you need to understand one thing. We say a thing is mutable if changes happen on that particular place. But if the changes happens on some other place, that doesn't mean that the thing is mutable. If changes happen at that place, at that object, then we say it as a mutable. It is a mutable. It is a mutable. It is a mutable object. But what is happening over here? When you create a reference variable and when you create an object, when you try to change its value, a new object with that new value is being created, and this reference variable will start pointing to this. So actually changes doesn't happen on the existing object. In existing object, changes doesn't happen. With those changes, a new object, with those changes, a new object is being created. A new object is created. So I would like to conclude several things over here. I would like to conclude several things over here by writing it. That object with certain value, let's suppose p, and if you try to change a value, and if a new object with that new value got created, that doesn't mean that the object is mutable. Object is mutable. If the changes happen in this only, that is, if this p got erased and a pep will come over here, then this we can say that the object is mutable. Got it? Over here the object was immutable, and now we are telling that object is mutable. So if changes happen on that object, that basically means that the object is mutable, changeable. And if with those changes a new object is being created, that means the object was immutable. So I think everyone got cleared about that what actually a mutable and immutable means. So I would like to say the one thing, remember these key points. If changes happen in existing object, then we say that object is mutable. Then we say object is mutable. Then we say object is mutable. If with those changes a new object is created, it means object is immutable. So in Python, strings are immutable. Now, remember this line that in strings, that basically in Python, strings are immutable. In Python, strings are immutable. If you try to change a value, a new object with new value will be created. So you can have a output, but internally Python strings are immutable. Python strings are immutable. So that's all for this video. We will be meeting in the next video with some new topics. Thank you.